Welcome to episode 5 of our inventory tutorial series. In this series, we're working on building an inventory system, but just to show you where we're at the minute, we can currently walk over items and we can pick up items. They can stack, and once the stack's full, so the tomato's got a maximum stack size of 5, it then goes over to the next free slot, and we can pick up slots and we can move them. As we walk over an item, it'll add itself to the first stack that has some free space in it. And if the stack's full, it'll just get the first free slot on the inventory, so it'll go here when we pick up a tomato. And we can move them around, and we can pick up these potatoes which don't stack, and we can, change the position, and they're actually changing in our inventory here. So I'll place that down, pick it up, and we can also pick them up and drop them out of our inventory to delete the items. But what we can't do at the minute is combine the stacks, swap items, or split the stacks, which is what we're going to work towards in this video. So let's just get started with that straight away. So if we go back over to our inventory system, inventory display class script, you can see that here's the two methods that here's the two kind of cases that we had for what happens when a slot is clicked on. And now we need to see what happens when we take into account some different kind of options. So for example, what happens when both slots have an item? We need to decide what to do, because are both items the same? If so, we want to be able to combine them. If they're not, we'll swap them. Can we actually combine the stacks? Is that possible? Is the stack full? And how full is the stack? So we need to start working on this. So the first thing I'm going to do is we'll account for swapping items, because that's the easiest to do first. So this is all kind of this all kind of flows into each other. So we'll actually work on this first. To do this, I'm going to just come out of this function, and I'm going to make a private void swap slots. And this is going to take in the clicked slot. So inventory slot UI clicked slot. I'm doing this here because we're going to use this function twice up here, so we may as well put it into its own function so we're not repeating stuff. Now to swap a slot, we need to clone the mouse slot first, because we need to make a copy of the mouse slot, so then when we move what's on our hotbar to the mouse, we'll obviously lose what's on the mouse, then we couldn't put the mouse in the empty slot. So we need to make a cloned kind of inventory slot of the mouse's data. So let's just do variable var cloned slot or duplicate slot, and this is just going to make a new inventory slot, and it's going to take the mouse inventory item dot inventory slot dot data, and it's going to hold the inventory slot dot stack size. So we're just making a temporary inventory slot that's not part of any system. It's just a sort of temporary slot in this one function, then it'll be disposed of once we've used it. So now we can say mouse inventory item dot clear slot, because we've got a copy of it, so we can clear it. And now we can pass in the clicked slots item, so we can update the mouse slot, and we can do clicked UI slot dot assigned inventory slot. So this is what we're doing up here when we pick up an item. So we've copied what was on the mouse, and then we're picking up the item that was currently in the slot. And then we want to clear the clicked slot because it's now on the mouse, so we've emptied the slot. And then we're doing what we did here. So we can actually just copy this, paste it here, but instead of the mouse inventory slot, we're going to pass in the cloned slot. And let's just rename this to clicked UI slot. Clicked UI slot. So that's swapping items. So we have an item on the mouse, we make a copy of it, then we clear the mouse off, put the click slot on the mouse, and then put the cloned then we put the copy of what was on the mouse into the UI slot, and then, this is disposed of once it goes out of scope. It's not used anymore, so we don't need it. So let's just go back up here. So the first thing we want to do is we need to account for both items, both the click slot and the mouse having an item on it. So we can just copy this, paste it here, and we'll say not equal to null and not equal to null. So if the click slot has an item and the mouse slot have an item, we now need to decide what to do. So both slots have an item, decide what to do. So we need to see whether both items are the same. Like, are we trying to place a tomato on a tomato or potato on a potato, etc.? Or are we placing a potato on a tomato? For now, let's just say if clicked UI slot dot assigned inventory slot dot item data is not equal to the mouse's inventory item data. So if they're not the same item, then we can just say swap slots. And we can pass in the clicked UI slot. So call that there. So now we should be able to swap our potatoes and our tomatoes. So let's hit play. So we can go over, pick up some items, and we can pick up a potato, and we'll swap it for the tomato, and we can put it back down. Now currently nothing happens with the potatoes. We're not adding it. So eventually, there's one potato here. We have one potato on the mouse. We'll click and it'll become two potatoes in that slot. But for now, we can now swap items. So we know our swap item method is working. So let's go back over to our script. So we're back over in our inventory display script. So let's start accounting for what happens if the items are the same. So let's just copy this. So we want to say if the clicked slots item is equal to the mouse's inventory item, and we want to check whether the clicked UI slot dot inventory slot, whether there's room left in the stack. And to check that, we're going to pass in the mouse inventory item dot assigned inventory slot dot stack size. So if we've got 3 potatoes on the mouse and we're trying to place them on top of a potato that's in the clicked UI slot, the slot that we click on, is there room in that stack for the amount of potatoes that we have on our mouse? And remember, this is this bool here. So all it's doing is it's checking whether the stack size plus the amount to add is less than or equal to the maximum that that item can hold. So if we've got a stack size of 3 in our inventory slot on our hotbar, and we're trying to add 2 that are held on the mouse, 3 plus 2 is equal to 5, which is less than or equal to the maximum stack size, which in this case is 5. If we tried to add 3 to a stack size of 3, this would return false, because obviously 3 plus 3 is 6, which is greater than the maximum stack size, so it would return false. We can update our stack sizes, so we can say clicked UI slot dot assigned inventory slot, and we can assign item, assign item, and let's assign the mouse inventory items inventory slot. And let's just remind ourselves what this function's doing. If we assign an item and the slot already has that item, it's going to add the stack to the stack size. If it's not the same item, it'll just overwrite the item, so it'll swap the items around. So in this case, we've already checked whether they're the same item and that the stack size won't go over the maximum stack size. So we can just basically add to the stack that's already there with this item. So we're assigning like a tomato to the tomato, so they're the same, so we're just going to add them to the stack. So then now they've been assigned, we can call update UI slot on our clicked UI slot. And then we need to clear our mouse inventory item because we've combined the items now. So now we need to check whether there isn't room left in the stack. And if there isn't, we need to know how much is actually left in the stack so we can take it from our mouse. So we'll do else if, we'll get this again. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to get this and cut it. And then up here, I'm going to say bool same item, or is same item. And we'll just put that there. And then we can just say here is same item. And then we can maybe bring this back up to this line because it is quite a long function. And the reason I've done that is because we need this again here. So else if it's the same item and there isn't room left in the stack. So this one is going to have to come down because it's a long one. So if the click slot, if there's no room left in the stack, we need to get out how much is left in the stack. So left in stack. So again, let's just remind ourselves. So we've got two versions of this. We've got one where it doesn't pass it out because we don't need to know. But when it returns false, we probably do want to know how much is remaining. So we can say here, item max data stack size, item data maximum stack size minus the current stack size. So if the max stack size is 5 and we have 3 currently, this is going to return 2. So here, let's open up our curly braces. So if it is the same item and there's not room left in the stack, let's get out how much is actually left in the stack. And we can actually just say if left in stack is less than 1, we can just swap the slots. Passing in the clicked UI slot. So, you know, if we have, so here we've got a full stack. So as we try and combine them, there's nothing left in the stack. So that'll be less than 1 because it'll be 0 and they swap. And that's just to account for, so here we've got our 2 and we can place 5 on it. So instead of adding 3 to this and leaving 2 on the mouse, it just swaps them because there's no point, you know, messing around and adding it to that stack just to leave them when we're going to get the same result from swapping them. So we can just swap them directly. So if left in stack is 0, which is essentially saying is the stack full. So let's just leave some notes here so we're fully aware of what's going on. So the stack is full, so swap the items. And we'll do else. So else the slot is not at max, so slot is not at max. So take what's needed from the mouse inventory. So let's do int remaining on mouse. And we're going to say equals the mouse inventory item dot inventory slot assigned inventory slot dot stack size minus left in stack. So if we've got 5 on the mouse and there's left in the stack is on the clicked slot is 2, this remaining on mouse int would be 3 because we've taken 2 from the mouse to fill up the stack. So then we can say clicked UI slot dot inventory slot dot add to stack. And we're just going to pass in the amount we want to add this time, not just because we already know that this is the same item. We don't need to call assign item. We can just add to the stack directly. We can just pass in left in stack. And then clicked UI slot dot update UI slot. And then let's update the mouse with how much is left remaining. So we can say variable new item is equal to new inventory slot with the assigned inventory slots data and our new amount, so remaining on mouse. Then we'll clear the mouse slot, and then we'll update the mouse slot with our new item. Then we can turn this if into an else and attach it to this whole statement. So if the item's the same and there's room left in the stack, let's combine them. If the item's the same and there's not room left in the stack to take the full amount, how much can it take? We're just checking whether it can take less than one, so the stack's full, and we'll swap them. Think about it, I don't know if that would ever get called, but you know, it works, so I'll check that in a second. Well, let's check that in a second. But we're saying else, let's calculate how much would be remaining on the mouse when we fill up the clicked UI slot stack. Let's fill up the UI slot stack, and then let's make the mouse inventory item have the new amount. And else, if they're not the same, so else if not is same, let's just swap the starts. Okay, so back in Unity, we can't currently split the stack, so it's kind of hard to show this off. But what I can do is if I click our player and I go over, you can see that we've got 5, 5, and 1. These are these tomatoes. I can change the inventory amount directly. So I can say there's 3 in this one, 2 in this one. And then if I, that won't update the UI because I've manipulated them directly. So I'm going to have to just pick them up and put them back down to get the correct amounts in there. So now we'll be able to see the combining of the items. So we've got 3 tomato stacks here with all different sizes. I'm going to add the 2 to the 1. So now there's 3 slots. We've combined them. 3 plus 3 will be 6, and the maximum stack size is 5. So I'm going to pick up the 3, place 2 into this stack. So now there's 5 in that stack, which is the maximum amount. And then we can put our 1 back down. And if we click, it'll just swap them around because the stacks are full. Like one of the stacks is full, so they won't combine. So the last kind of implementation of this is splitting the stacks, and then we'll be able to work on the chests and etc. in the next episode. So let's get the stack splitting working. Let's go back over to our inventory system in Visual Studio. Okay, so let's just come up here and type in bool is shift pressed, and we'll say this is equal to keyboard.current.left shift key is pressed. So if the left shift key is pressed when we click on a slot, this will be true, and if it's not, it'll be false. This is using the new input system, and it's using it directly. If you wanted to use your input action asset and have it so players can change which key is the split stack key, you'd have to do that through the input action asset and like maybe use like an input manager. We're just going to read it directly here because this isn't an input system tutorial, it's a inventory system tutorial. If you want me to go over and cover that in some more detail and actually do some input system stuff, let me know in the comments below. But for now, we'll just check it directly and hard code it, so it'll always be the left shift key. And it's here that we're going to check this and split the stack if possible. So for now, I'm just going to say if is shift pressed, and then we're going to and if it is, then we'll split the stack. So we'll and split stack. And we'll say else. So if the shift key isn't pressed, then we'll just pick up the item as we have been doing. So to actually split the stack, we're going to make a method on our inventory slot. So we'll say if shift is pressed and clicked UI slot dot inventory slot dot split stack, which is a method that we're going to make in a second. So let's go and make that. So let's go over to our inventory slot class, and let's just let's come down here and we'll do a public, and this is going to be a bool because it's going to return false if we can't actually split the stack. For example, if there's just one item, we won't be able to split it. So we're going to say public bool split stack, and this is going to pass out a new inventory slot because it's going to have a new inventory slot with the split amount already in it. So we can say out inventory slot split stack. So let's just start defining this. So if stack size is less than or equal to 1, then we're just going to return null. So we're just going to return false, and split stack will be equal to null. But if it is greater than 1, so if there's multiple items in the stack and we can successfully split them, let's just calculate how much half the stack actually is. So we'll do half stack equals, and I'm going to do mathf.round to int, and we'll do stack size divided by 2. And then we'll take half the stack size off this amount. So let's just use our remove from stack function, and we'll pass in the half stack size. So we're going to take half the stack off the current stack. We're then going to set the split stack equal to a new inventory slot with the item data and the half stack amount in. So if we have 4 and we've held down shift and clicked, we're going to split the stack. It's going to split the stack from 4 divided by 2, so the half stack would be 2. We'll remove 2 from the 4 that we currently have in the stack, and then we'll make a new inventory slot with 2 of the same item in it, and we'll pass that back out to our inventory display. So we can say out inventory slot, and this is the half stack slot. So we can put so here we know there's nothing on the mouse, so we can just update the mouse slot with our half stack. And because we've changed the slot directly on the clicked slot, we can just update the UI, and this will check for its new amount and it'll refresh it. And then we can just return, because we're done, we don't need to carry on. And just to be kind of consistent, we can put our returns in elsewhere. It won't matter too much, but let's just return once we get to those kind of key points, because there's no point trying to process the rest of the code, because we have separate if statements. So it'd return and then it'd try and do this, and it'd be confusing, so we just need to return out of them. That should be our split stack. Oh, we're not, we need to return true here. Return true there because we successfully split the stack. So let's go back over to Unity. Make sure we've cleared the log, make sure there's no errors. Let's hit play. So we can now pick up loads of tomatoes. And we've got 2 here. We can hold down shift and click, and we can pick up 1, place the 1 down. We can combine them back together. We can hold down shift, split the stack, so we'll take 2 from it because we've rounded up. We can click again. We can add 2 to 2, 4 to 1. They'll swap. There's 2 there. Let's split them again. So let's pick up the potatoes. If we hold down shift, it'll just pick up the slot, because it'll just pick up the potato because we can't split one, so it'll just pick it up, place it back down. We can't combine these items because the maximum stack size is 1. And then once the inventory is full, it won't pick up any more items unless it can add them to an existing stack. And we can clear our inventory of all of the potatoes and start picking more up. So I think that's a good place to leave this video. All of the core functionality of manipulating the inventory is now done. What we're going to work on in the next video is the ability to access the chests. So you see in my test project, as I walk up to a chest, I can press a button on the keyboard and the inventory window pops up. I can place items in it. I can close the inventory, come over to this chest. It's a smaller chest, there's less inventory slots assigned to it. We can put in 5 hearts there. We can go back to this chest, and this chest has its inventory system all set up and ready to go. We can take them back out. And we've got the same sort of functionality as well, so we can put them in and we can split them here. And then we can take one out, leave one in, come pick up this item, try and put them in, it'll swap. And we can put them back over here. So yeah, that's what we'll work towards in the next video. As always, if you're watching these videos as they go out, the full series is already up over on Patreon, which is patreon.com/danposs. As well as all of the videos, I'm exporting packages at the end of each episode with the scripts. So if you need to follow along and you want the code to check against yours, you can get that by subscribing over on Patreon. If you do have kind of any issues and you want some help, let me know in the comments below. The best place for help is probably the Discord though. There is an invite to the Discord in the description box, because you can post code snippets there and it's a bit easier to share links to stuff than a YouTube comments, and it's a bit more real time. So if you do need any help, I recommend going over to the Discord. But in the meantime, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.